Why does this happen? There, I got it. Mm-hmm. But it's not private. So what? It'll be very late for you after I'm done. You just need to go get yourself cleaned up and go to bed and all that stuff in the meantime. Mhm. But you can't do dishes. Like you can shower, but it's okay. You can hear it, but I don't know what you're doing. And hi, I'm Sher, the Shadow Walker. And tonight we're going to take a deep dive into the Canadian Dogman. I looked at Dogman in general, and there was so many sightings in every country I looked at that I thought that I'd break it down and just do Canada first, because that's our home country. So a Dogman's footprint size can be anywhere from 8 to 9 for a female and 13 to 16 for a male in length. And the width is between 4 to 5 inches. So I have one up on the screen there behind me that you can see that somebody has taken. And down below, there's another picture we're going to talk about in a little bit. So unlike a dog, and I have extra large breed dogs, my biggest one is a Limburg, and so he makes massive paw prints. And so unlike a dog's 4 toes, or a wolf's 4 toes. They only have 3 toes and claws. Now, my big guy, you're going to see his claws when he steps down, but it does not look anything like that. And I can see how some people can mistaken a dog, an extra large breed dog, especially something like a Leonberg that stands on its hinds and its snout is black. Yeah, you could at night mistaken, and he loves to stand on his hind legs. He's always standing on them, watching the neighbors. So that's just a little thought when you're looking into a Dogman. They place their heel on the ground just like a human. They do not put a print down like a dog. They actually push that heel into the ground. So you see it. And height. I've been looking now. The only place in Canada where I found they were a slight bit smaller was in Prince Edward Island, where they could be 5 to 6 feet. But for the most part, 7 to 8 feet tall. Somebody reported a 9-foot one, but I couldn't get a lot of information on that one. The eyes. Now, a lot of people will say that they glow like an amber coal, so they'll go from an orange to a copper to a red. And yes, they like the Bigfoot. They do mind speak. So a lot of people have reports, and we'll get into some of them, but basically what they're saying is they sense, just like I did with the Bigfoot, they hear it in their head what it is relaying to them. And generally with the Dogman, they're always being told to leave that area, to get out of that area. Now, I believe that I know the reason for that, and I'll get into that later too. Now, the effects that it has once you see the Dogman. So on a human, generally, from all the reports that I've read, that they'll cock their head slightly to the side and give you a bit of a sinister look, or just a look that just goes right down to your soul. And that look, it gives people a sense of dread or fear. Sometimes they're just paralyzed and they can't move from where they are. They, some people report being nauseous. Some people report relieving their bodily functions at that point. People say they'll either smell rot, like if you've ever been around in the bush around bears, or generally bears or wolves, you're going to smell them. You can smell them. So it has a scent to it that they'll say is sulfur or rot. Generally with a big animal like a bear or that, you smell a rotten smell from them. Because I've been up close to the bears. And that fear that that person initially feels from the Dogman, it stays with them. So that's another thing we're going to look at, because it's staying with them and they're carrying it on into their lives. So it's kind of like PTSD. And I mean, they have night terrors. They feel like they're being watched all the time, night and day. Some people have even reported moving and still feeling like they've been followed, or they'll see them again. They could just be possibly, hypervigilant. So maybe they are seeing more than one of them. There's no doubt in my mind that that can occur. And so I was looking at Toronto, and so people say they'll move to the city. And I remember hearing, so it was 2021. I remember hearing a report that down on the Rouge. Yeah, the Rouge Trail. It's a beautiful trail. If you've ever been down in Toronto and you've walked any of the trails to the Niagara Escarpment or the Rouge Trail, whatever, whichever end you're on or wherever you are. This lady was out walking her dog, and it was May 3rd, and it was approximately between 11:30 and 12:30 in the daytime, and she was up on the trail, and she looked down and she could see something sitting. And at first she thought, oh, it's a big coyote. Um, they're very prevalent in that area, generally coy, a little bit bigger than a coyote. So people kind of mix up the two. So she stood there for a second, and it stood right up. And she said it was 7 feet tall. She knew it wasn't a wolf. She didn't know what it was, but she knew it wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a bear. And she wanted to run, but she was paralyzed in fear. So she just stood there. And she said that she stood there for a bit, even after it turned and went back into the bush. And she left and went to, she waited on the trail, and then some other people came by, and she was then able to move. That's how much fear she had. And that was in Toronto. So, I mean, people can think I'm going to move to the city to be safe, but they're not. They're just not. So the stigmas that are attached to looking at a dogman or a Bigfoot, any type of cryptid, in my opinion, are absolutely ridiculous. There have been reports that go way back. So in Canada in the 1600s, there was reports. So down in Quebec, so you'd get the coureur de bois, which was the runner of the woods. So you would get your coureur de bois having reports of seeing la rougarou, which is your werewolf or your dogman. And so that's been going on for generations. And there was a camp down there that the hunters would go and hunt. And it's very mountainous. It's very beautiful down there. And they were hunting, and there was more than one sighting of a dog man. And those hunters, they refused to go back in the woods. They wouldn't go back again. There's been reported cases of loggers, and they won't go back in the woods. I've never seen a report of anybody that's on a train like that works for, we have two primary rails. Well, we have, and a passenger rail. So either the VIA, the CP, or the CN. I've never heard of a conductor or an engineer ever speaking of one. So it'd be fascinating to hear, somebody, if they wanted to email me and tell me about that. That would be quite interesting. So anywhere from Gaspé to the St. Lawrence Valley, this is an area of the Mi'kmaq, the Métis, which my heritage comes from the Mi'kmaq Métis, and the Algonquins. They would report seeing what they called a QE, or we called a gao-gao, which is, well, the gao-gao is the Bigfoot and the QE is the dogman. So they've had oral records of this written throughout history. So, this is the 16th century, right down. And so why are the government is still not willing to admit that these, what people deem as cryptoids, exist? And so many people have seen them that I think it would be better that we just, in my opinion, we were just more upfront about these things. Even in Southern Ontario corridor, since the 1600s, there was witness reports of 7-foot wolf-headed creatures moving through the suburban and rural fringes. So just on the edge of the bush. And there was active sightings within 30 miles of that sighting. So there's been more, Grand Valley people have seen more of them. There's a note that they always say that if you see a Bigfoot, there's an increase in Dogman sightings. And I think that is highly likely. I call, because I'm psychic, and so it's different for me than it is for other people. I call the Bigfoot my guardian, and I call the Dogman the Death Warrior guardian. Like I just got a question. Am I worried? Well, they could be possibly worried about tourism dollars, but since the occurrences are all over the world, that just doesn't work, because every country in every part of the world has records right back through history of Dogman. So I know there's a lot of research in the cryptoid world going on right now, but it's there. It's been recorded in history. And, so that just because the government isn't saying they're there, it doesn't mean they're not there. It's as simple as that. And we have so much tourism here in Canada, and people come to the Rocky Mountains to hike, and like to go to Lake Louise. You could stand for hours in line just to get to see Lake Louise. And so that's all in the middle of the wilderness. And the possibility of people seeing a Bigfoot from anywhere in the world is, it's highly likely that they're going to come in to see a Bigfoot in Canada, or they're going to see a Dogman, because if you're a tourist and you're in those areas, that's just probably going to be a natural occurrence. So there was a case that I looked at, but I'm a little skeptical of part of the case. It was the McLeod brothers, and they were gold miners. And this was between 1908 and 1917. These brothers were found decapitated, and it was blamed on their rival gold mining people. So I think that was pretty extreme, but but the local Dene people in that area, which I believe was in the Quebec, New Brunswick area, believed that it was a wahila. Yeah, that's how you say it, which is a giant upright canine. So sorry if I messed that word up. So I'll just say a Dogman. And at the same time, they seen Bigfoot. So both in the same area at the same time. And so that was down in the Quebec area. There was also the Quebec case of the truck driver, and his picture here, this picture that's on the bottom of my screen behind me, is of the photo that he took from the Seven Chute Fall, which is over on the opposite side of the St. Lawrence, over by Saguenay, and that's in Quebec, for those who don't know. And he didn't realize it at the time, the photo that he had shot. It was in the 70s, so obviously the way that film was developed then, it took time. So once he got the pictures home and he looked at them, this is the picture he came up with. Now, at that time in that area, there was a white poodle missing, and a lot of people have speculated that that is the white poodle. I kind of think it's a younger, juvenile Dogman, that one is carrying the other, dog woman, dog person. So that was in Quebec. Now, in Alberta, there is a Cree man, and he's in northern Alberta, and his name was Ken. And he came out in 2024 to speak of his sightings that he had had. He had had both types of sightings, but the Dogman were getting more aggressive, in his words. So he said that between 1999 and 2009, he had had a lot of sightings of them because he was a hunter. So he was in the bush. And you go in there to get your firewood. So you're going to see things. He said that it had turned its head in a bit to him, and it looked at him with those glowing eyes. And he said, quote, their eyes are cold with a calculating recognition, understanding who he was, that they had seen him before, and he felt fear. So that's like one of the first times that anybody had spoke about it from the Cree Nation that I could find. Probably in the oral history, there's a lot, but they don't generally share that with other people. So that's passed down through their generations. And so he was nice enough to come out and speak. And I listened to the podcast it was on Apple that was done. And it was pretty interesting to listen to him. So in rural Alberta in 2024, on a rural farm, so middle of nowhere, farmer sees a upright walking towards him. It's over 7 to 8 feet tall. And he's seen it more than once. And he went to get into his pickup truck, was the first time he had seen it. And when he got into his pickup truck, he looked in his rearview mirror, like everybody does, and he realized in the back bed of his truck was a Dogman. So I guess he got out of his truck and booted it back towards the house. I don't know whether he let the truck roll like in neutral or what he did. But he said that. So there was 3 sightings. His wife seen, Mary, she's seen the Dogman on top of their work shed roof. And his brother-in-law seen it starting to climb up the side of the house. So I was looking into this, and just like I did with Bigfoot, I always try to find a historical correlation between things so we can bridge the gap of all the fluff that's in the middle. So what I found was there had to be some burials on that property of some sort. And it is my belief, and in my opinion, that the Dogman is a guardian warrior of the dead warriors. So just like Anubis is in the Egyptians, gods, it is the same. Now, it does not have to be, you don't have to be Cree, you don't have to be Métis to be guarded. You could be a soldier, you could be a farm, like a homesteader that was guarding his territory, doing his duty for his property, but died in that spot. So somewhere along there must have been some sort of a altercation or a death from something like smallpox or typhoid. And some people in that area tried to save other people and somebody died. So whichever it is, whether it was the death of a warrior of some sort on that soil at that time, somewhere around there has to be one. They did take dogs and they did believe that there was graves on that property. And that's why I say that, is because when I looked into these cases, this is what I've seen, even in the States. And for me, I don't fear them. I don't want to come upon one in the middle of the night. I wouldn't want to come upon anything in the middle of the night, but I feel they have a duty, and they're here and they're guarding that soul that was lost on that spot, because that soul is there. It's not gone to the other parallel. So you're kind of like looking at, what it's doing, in my opinion. So he had 3 incidents on the property, and that's 3 different eyewitnesses on one property to seeing them. And another one that I found really interesting was Crow's Nest Pass. And I remember hearing about this one out when I was sitting down one day having a coffee. It was near Deadwood, which is near Coleman, the town of Coleman. Crow's Nest Pass is a beautiful area. These people were out and they were skiing. They were cross-country skiing, husband and wife. And so they parked in, there's those parking lots. Most people out here are familiar with them. There's a big parking lot you can park in, and then there's trails you can go off on. So they had gone off on a trail and they were skiing, and they came to a roadway and they were going to cross the roadway. And as they crossed the roadway into the field, which they had to go across this field, then through another trail that was in the woods, a shorter distance, and then they'd be back to the parking lot where their vehicle was. So as they started across the field, the woman, she noticed something standing in the tree line looking at them. And at first she thought, well, geez, that's a wolf, because it was down. And then it stood up, and it was 7 to 8 feet tall. And it was standing there near a tree in the tree line. And she was like just looking at it, and her husband seen it. And they both had this guttural feeling of dread come over them. And they did not know what to do. They're in the middle of the boonies. It's beautiful, but you're in the middle of nowhere. He was smart enough. He had a gun with him. He had a gun strapped on, but it was a 22. So a 22, again, not going to do much damage to anything big. So he fired a warning shot near its foot, and it didn't move. Then it growled at them, and they could feel that growl go right through them. So it was a guttural growl, and it was a fear. They just couldn't move at that point. They were just like standing there. He realized that wasn't enough. So he fired a shot. He didn't want to kill it. He fired a shot at the tree that it was standing beside, and it still decided it was not going to move. So it leaned on the tree with its one paw, and it just stood there, and it growled, and it showed its teeth. So he fired 3 shots into its chest. Now that's a 22 caliber. He was a distance away. They realized that they needed to get out of there. So they just started skiing, and they could hear it. They thought, well, it's gone. It went down on 4 legs. It's gone, like it's injured. It followed them through the woods, because they had to go across that field, and they could hear it crashing through the trees. And as they got to that brush line, then they knew that was their home stretch. As they were going through there, they could hear it behind them coming. By the time they got to their vehicle in that parking lot, there wasn't a lot of whether they left their skis. I would have left my skis. But they as they got in the car, or when they got in the car, the woman noticed that she had wet herself because of fear. I couldn't find any other reports on any after effects on them or anything like that. I just know that they did not want their name in public, and they didn't want to be ridiculed. So I don't blame them for that. So, but they both had felt that fear wash over them. So that was like two in this area. And then there's the Vegreville in BC. Now, I've got reports that this is there's two Vegravilles. There's one Vegreville, Alberta, which is just of Edmonton. If you're heading over towards Saskatchewan, you'd be heading up towards Lloydminster and Saskatoon. But the second one that I got was from BC. So the one in BC, again, 7 to 8 foot bipedal creature, had been stalking this farm. I believe they were horse farmers for a bit. And it came to a head when it broke into their house. The man had a very high-powered rifle. He was used to grizzly bears and large game. So he had the big gun. And it crashed through the kitchen hallway, and he shot it in the chest. He unloaded 6 shots, and he said it stood there for a minute, and then it let go a smell that was kind of like a sulfury smell, metallic. And that came out of its nose and out of its mouth. And then it left. And the neighbor was upstairs in his house. He heard the commotion. He was standing at the window. I believe he was 26, the neighbor. And he saw it start to limp and then just take off at a really high pace speed across this field. So my take on this, in my opinion, is that because it's not from this realm, that it can shadow walk. So it can go from parallel to parallel. It's also able to be hit with a bullet, absorb the bullet into its body, disperse the sulfur and the metallic from the bullet back at you in that gas, and absorb, if you will, the bullet, because it's not of here. So there's 2 different endings to that story. One is both people, the husband and the wife that were in that house, were deceased because of this, and that there was reports that it was a cougar that did it. But the report that I got was that they couldn't take it anymore and they had to leave, and they left there then. They just left. And that got sold and they were gone. So, and I do know that they suffered from night terrors, that they suffered from feeling they were being watched all the time, no matter where they were, that it had been following them. And so did the neighbor have those same feelings of dread, nausea, vomiting. It seems as if it tags you. So it puts a tracker on you and it knows who you are by looking into you. So if it ever wants to find you or it's curious about you again, for some reason, the 2 of yous are being put together and you don't know what that reason is. You're terrified of it. I think sometimes you need to take a step back and take a look at the history in that area, see what happened on that property, and get a faith healer or shaman out there to clear that property. And it has to be the property. You have to find where the person died, that the blood was shed, and that Blood goes down into the rocks. And you're going to note, if you look at this, the fault line, and you're going to note the magnetic rocks and the energy that the rocks give and absorb. So they'll absorb blood, and blood is energy. It's our life. We need blood to survive. And that energy goes into the rock and it stays there and it makes an imprint when somebody passes on. Now, if you die of natural causes, it's unlikely going to create a negative imprint or an imprint that needs to be noted. But if you die defending your country, defending your property, defending your family, even if it's from sickness, records in history show these areas where these sightings are in these areas. In fact, down in the States, there are places where there was battles and they always see the dogmen around those battleground areas. And that, my belief, is that they are the death warriors. So unless somebody is able to cross over those people that died in that area and tell them to go to the light, go to where they're supposed to be now, the dog man still has to do his job. And his job is to defend them. And you're in their space. You're in the sacred area that person has passed away, that spirit is sitting. And it is his job to guard it. So a lot of people need to take note of that. I think if you do that, when you become, or when you have an encounter with one, if you can keep that in your mind somehow, reach down in there and grab that and pull it up, you're going to find that very thought is going to help you to understand what's going on. And because they can mind speak, you need to impress upon them that you're sorry, you didn't mean to step into this area, and back away. Just back away. And then when you can have somebody come, if it's on your property or something, have them come and help you with it. Have a faith healer or a shaman that is known for what they can do come and help you. That would be best. If you can find a psychic who is also, like, I'm Métis, so you want to find somebody in that, I'd still like to take somebody with me of the band origin from that area to help clear that area and give that dogman, which I consider a guardian, but absolutely is a predator if you're going to step into its territory. So it's kind of both, but it is a guardian of warriors, of people that have passed on, and that's of all races, and that's all over the world. So that's not going to change. And so I was looking at, there's a really nice, okay, so in Highway 11 in Ontario, so Barrie and Aurelia, Oro-Medonte area, this couple driving 11:30 at night. It's a full moon. People always say you're going to see it on a full moon. Maybe you're going to see it in the daytime too. So just depends on the area. So the full moon, and it crosses the highway. It's bipedal. It's on its hind legs, which the way that they hinge is backward. And there's no mistaking that this is not a wolf. And I lived in that area, and you're going to see deer, not so much as bears, a little, but not too many. You might see a wolf. I've seen a cougar along there, but you're going to be used to seeing wildlife enough driving up there that you're going to know the difference. So they had that sighting. So that's credible, in my opinion, every time there is two people or more that witness the same event. So this couple seen it, And then another couple was driving on a back road coming home from a party down towards Kitchener-Waterloo area. And there, in just up the other side of the ditch, just at the brush area, the female, the passenger, she had her head leaning against the window and she saw it. And her boyfriend saw it and he stopped. And she started screaming at him, drive, 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 because it started to come. And she suffered PTSD from it. And they both suffered night terrors from it. And that's that imprint that it makes on you. And I went and looked at some cases down in Nova Scotia. Now, I live down there. We've lived all over Canada. So in Nova Scotia, Kejimkujik, I lived in that area. I love that area. There was a report on Highway 8. Now, if you've ever driven in the Keji area and you're driving on Highway 8, you know that's a highway that's heavily traveled by the logging trucks. It's heavily traveled by the fishery industry. So sometimes I'd see huge boats coming down that highway, going from one side to the other. So they'd be going from the Atlantic on the Halifax side over to the Bay of Fundy on the Digby side. So yeah, so you'd have this passing up and down the highway. So the highway, it winds. So generally people are going pretty quick along there. And, but you have to slow down at certain areas for like hairpin turns or kind of warps in the road from the big lumber trucks going along or from wildlife. So these people was a couple again. They were down by Keji and they saw it go across the road. And then it started running beside their vehicle and it could keep up to 60 miles an hour. So they were booting it down that road, but there are turns where you have to slow down and they knew that. So that was like that terror that was in them. And that did the same thing to them where there's night terrors. It causes a lot of health issues, People can't sleep. They can't think straight. They feel like they're being watched night and day. They do have reoccurrences of seeing them again, or maybe that imprint is just making them see them again to fear them, because basically it's going to put the fear of it in you. And something that big, looking that way, for sure it's going to put fear in you. And then there was a couple of other couples on that same roadway that seen the same thing. Now, there was a study done in Keji on cougars at that time. So this would be back in the 90s. There was a study done on cougars over a 10-year period because they wanted to see if there was any in that area. Now, I lived there 2016 or something. So, for several years. So this was prior to my time, but they did the study on the cougars and they couldn't find any cougars. But these were hunters and people that they had going in the bush where they were doing this study, and they were coming upon Dogman. And when you're in Keji, it's a big park. It's beautiful, and it's like lakes upon lakes, and there's tons of trails. And a lot of coyotes, a lot of koi, a lot of wolves. I know people are going to say they're not, like maybe not at the time that they were doing those studies, but when we moved down there, we had to fence in an area just for the dogs and us for safety. It was a constant thing with the koi. They were right there at the property all the time watching. There was black bears everywhere, but we put sauerkraut out. You just put a can of it out and you won't get any. And so we had no black bears on our property because they don't like the smell of it. But we did have a black bear right off the property. And I remember a tourist bus coming by and I was in my garden out in the yard and he beeped at me and he yelled at me, "There's a 400-pound bear right there off the edge of your property." And but I was out with the dogs, and I knew like we'd go right back in the house. You always had to have a gun because of the wildlife. And at night, driving down that road, for me and my husband, it was pitch black on Highway 8. And at times, we'd slow down for a family of raccoons. A couple of times we had to slow down because a black bear was standing on its hinds, which they will at the side of the road. They will stand up on their hind legs and look from side to side before they cross. Seen that numerous times. So I've seen that in Ontario, all over the place. So, and then there was a sighting, if I can find it in my notes. And all these people say the same thing about the stare and how it affects them. And, I did that one. Fire the shot morning. Sorry, I'm just pulling up my notes here. They're a little. There was in Nova Scotia, there was high school students, and they were track and field, so they were practicing. And the one young guy, his father was the actual coach for the track and field. So they were off school grounds in this area, and they were running this wooded area trail. They all seen the Dogman, including the coach / father, and that affected all of them. So that was a lot of people to eyewitness the Dogman. So extensively, and when you get over towards Cape Breton Highlands, because of the Mi'kmaq and the rocks in that area and the ceremonies that went on these rocks over on the cliffs, there's a lot of ships that come and would shipwrecked in that area. And there's this massive cliff of rock, and it was said at one point that when I looked back in history that the Mi'kmaq would do offerings up there, and the your faith healer, your shaman would do the ceremonial dance that they would do up there. So it's a very special area. And there's been reports of them climbing the cliffs and people seeing them climbing up the cliffs over there in that area. They're seeing Dogman. And so that's right across that entire province. Probably not so much sightings down when you get towards Yarmouth, but I think that's primarily because there's so much fog there. It's very foggy there. It could be foggy there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's just foggy. Because you've got the Atlantic Ocean and the Bay of Fundy, and you just get a lot of fog in that area. The in Prince Edward Island, they're noted to be 4 or 5 feet tall, so smaller. Some people say 6 feet, muscular build, and they're right over in the St. Peter's Bay, Goose River area. That's where there's been a lot of sightings. Know that area well. So, yeah. And then there was a report from Jack Labonte. He was in BC, and this was October 2025. And he was home, and he had walked his friend home and come back. He was staying at his place by himself. His parents were on a vacation, and he saw 7 to 8 foot one. And that left an effect on him. And I believe he's somebody that's researching them now. So, I mean, at least he's put it into a positive state. All over BC, they've been seen and heard. Victoria, they've been witnessed in the clearing. There was a 6-foot fence, and they were sitting at a bonfire, and they watched it clear the fence and go over into the next yard. as you get out of Victoria and you're going up towards Duncan and areas, the trees are absolutely beautiful, and you're right into forest, just like you are on the mainland, like when you're over towards the Rockies. So there's a lot of space there for something to hide and people not to know that it's there. And there has been 3 to 4 eyewitness accounts of Dogman right in the Victoria area. And even the sounds that they make, they've been recorded there. So BC, Alberta, um, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, same thing, sightings, people, the same type of thing. Ontario, all over Ontario too, Southern Ontario, um, yeah, right down Southern Ontario, right up right over the Niagara Escarpment, all the way up into the Bluffs, up into the Blue Mountains, Highway 11. There was one in Kapuskasing. There was an avid hunter. So that Kapuskasing, you're running straight up Highway 11 to get to Kapuskasing. So straight up from Toronto, right up. And it's a beautiful area, Kapuskasing. Lots of woods. Great if you're a hunter, fisher, you're going to love it there. The man lived there, and he was an avid hunter, and it would be March because it was bear season, and he was out hunting bear. So that'd be black bear. And he was in the bush, and he felt like he was being watched. And at one point when he turned, he saw a dog man. It was between 7 to 8 feet tall, and it was following him, basically stalking him while he was stalking a bear. He felt that fear, and this man had been in the bush all the time. He was not afraid of anything. If he wasn't hunting, he was fishing. Wilderness was his thing. And in that area, you're going to see lots of wildlife, tons of wildlife. You're going to have moose run across the road in front of you. You're going to have black bears, anything. It is there. So he got out of the woods real quick. He left that bush and he went home. He was so afraid that he sold all of his belongings, and he never hunted again, and he moved to Toronto. So that's why I put that case up there in Toronto in the first place. I wanted people to realize that they're being seen in Toronto, because I grew up in the Toronto Simcoe County corridor all the way up, and have lived all the way up in the Muskokas and everywhere in Ontario, all over Southwestern, everywhere. So at one point there was a lot of wilderness down that way. And now, with the urban sprawl, as they put it, it is, there's a lot less, but there's still a lot of areas of bush. So you're not going to move something out of that area that's that big or is doing a job in that area. Basically, you're going to see them, and they're starting to see them. And people are actually starting to come forward, which I think is a good thing, because you have to realize for every one case that we see or that somebody reports that they're brave enough, because when I had my Bigfoot encounter 6 years before I came forward. So I don't know, when I got in my 60s, I thought, hell with it. I'm just going to say it. It doesn't matter. So a lot of people have seen them, and a lot of people have seen Dogman. And I think for every one that comes forward, you could have 50 to 100 or more that aren't coming forward. So it would be great if more people came forward and reported it. And I don't think, in my opinion, reporting it to the police or reporting it to the MNR if you're in Ontario, or Department of Parks out here, is going to make much of a difference, because it's, in my opinion, that they cover it up. There was an incident in Kananaskis, it was last year, where a group of hikers started on a trail, and they could see in a field more than one of them, more than one dog man, and they could see them stand up on their hind legs and get to that 7-8 foot height. And they did report it. And when I've looked at reports, the reports are reports of wolves. So somebody's not writing the reports properly, right? Put it down as a dog man. You're not crazy. And the more you put the sightings down, the more you can look at the areas that they're seen in and have somebody go in those areas and figure out who died there and what happened there. In New Brunswick, there was a lot of areas where, like over towards Moncton, there's a park. They call it, I may not be pronouncing it right, it sounds like Cocaine Park. And there have been reported sightings in that area, a lot of them. And I looked back in the history of that area, and what I found was that from the 1600s up, there was so much war. The British, there was war with, at one point, the British had actually put a bounty on the Mi'kmaq's scalps. And the people, so I got a note there. Yes, absolutely. If you have any information on a dog man or a Bigfoot, absolutely just send it in to me, and I'll get my email address. I'll get my mod to put my email address up on the screen, or somebody else knows it in there, they can, and we'll have it, and you can contact me. So when I was looking at this area in New Brunswick, I found with all the bloodshed, because at one time, like I was saying, the British had put a bounty on the Mi'kmaq for scalps, and they actually scalped the Mi'kmaq. Women and children were also scalped, and that's in history. So that to me is horrific. It just takes me back, because I'm Métis, and Grand Chief Membertou is my ancestral grandfather, and that really cuts deep when I hear that. But there was also raiding parties in that area. There was the British. Then there was smallpox, and at one time they thought typhoid had come across on a boat from Britain. And so there was massive deaths in this area. So I believe that area needs to be cleared. And if that area was cleared, we would see a difference in the activity. If you look back in the Egyptian history and you understand what Anubis was and what its job was, then you'll understand more about the Bigfoot, and you'll understand more about the dog man, and you'll take that with you, and it's a little less spooky. I mean, seeing something that big face to face is going to scare it out of anybody. But if you have some knowledge, you're going to have to stand back for a second and say, what happened in this area? So every time there's a massive loss of lives like this, I mean, then you're going to have them protecting those people who lost their lives in that area. So I think sometimes it's when you're home and you can rationalize that in your head. Yes, you did see it. Yes, it was scary. Yes, it does not look like it's from here, because it's not. Can it take a human, I'll say, or a corporeal form? Absolutely. Can it take a non-corporeal form? A lot of times you're going to see them with orbs around them, just like you are the Bigfoot. Well, the orbs are actually a portal or a other dogman, if you will, that they can sense from their pack to call up to that area if they need be. So from a different parallel, not from here. So keep that in mind when you're looking at what has occurred and what has happened to you. And if you are losing sleep, your health is deteriorating, you can email me. And if I can help you, I will. You have to understand how to clear the area properly, what clears the area. And it's not going to be a religious person. It's going to be, so for like New Brunswick, you need the Mi'kmaq and the Métis. You need them in there. And you're going to be able to clear that area if you understand how to use rocks properly to clear an area. If you don't know, then contact me, because I'm not down there right now. But if I can give you any help and you want to do it, contact me and I will give you my way of doing it. There's so the reports are all over Canada like that. And for every one report, like we could get 50 to 150 that we're not seeing. You're going to see them in cemetery areas. They're guarding. That makes total sense. But they're also protecting. So like a guardian is to protect over something. And a predator, well, they're considering you the predator when you're coming into that area that they feel you shouldn't be in, because they're protecting spirits. And that's their job. And so they're like your death warrior soldiers. They're not to be confused with a hellhound. Hellhounds are a lot smaller. They're a lot more scarier, in my opinion. I had an occurrence with one. So at one point, maybe we will talk about that. But there is a lot of cases right across Canada. I have yet to find a province that has no sightings, from Newfoundland, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, right up into the frozen tundra. They are seeing them. They are everywhere. We are pushing our way with urban sprawl out into these areas. And as we push big cities like Toronto, at one time, Toronto was an hour away from us, and you hit Bradford, and really there was nothing between there. Now you're coming up that corridor, and there are gas stations and homes, and everything is just amalgamated into one, and it's built all the way up. And areas that I used to cross country ski in are now subdivisions. And so people like us, who used to live in an outer city area, 20 minutes out of town, in the what they'd call the sticks, in a little town, I was used to Menacing Swamp. And so I grew up walking through there and hiking through there, and I have never seen anything around that area of a Bigfoot or a Dogman. It wasn't until I got to Nova Scotia that I seen a Bigfoot and a very odd wolf, which I'm not going to say was a Dogman, because it doesn't have the characteristics of what everybody else is saying. What I seen was, it came out of my deck in the same house, and it was prior, probably about a year and a half before I seen the Bigfoot. And the wolf was sitting. So I had a fenced area, and we had 2 acres. So we had this nice run for the dogs, nice fenced yard area. And then we had the rest of it was just clear open. And so about 1,000 feet from me, there was a tree that we had cut down. The stump was about 3.5 feet high. And sitting behind it, I noticed a wolf. Well, I thought it was a wolf. And I could see it from its knee joints on its front paws up. It was big, but I had extra large breed dogs. So to me, it was just big. The one thing that was odd about it was its blue eyes. And it just looked at me, and I looked at it and I stared at it for, it seemed like about 20 minutes. We just kind of looked at one another, and there was not words exchanged or anything, but there was no fear. And then it was gone. And my big guy, he would have reacted had it been threatening. And he did not react. He went down, did his business, came back up and sat on the deck. And if there was anything around, we had bobcats come through there, and he would let me know right away. So any type of wildlife that came through there, he was not afraid of, and he was going to let you know that it was there. He wanted to go out when the Bigfoot came, and I wouldn't let him go out. So, and that would have been in the fenced area, but that's like crazy. So anybody who has any type of sighting that they want to report, that they are, and you want to stay anonymous, or you want to come up on and talk about it, just email me, and I am happy to talk to you about it, and take down your information and help you if you're still having night terrors. If there's anything that I can help you with, or guide you in a direction to somebody who can help you, you're not crazy. You're not alone. There's lots of people that have these experiences. I think, frankly, people out in the bush searching and hunting, just in my opinion, it's the wrong thing to do. People are going to have sightings are the people who are supposed to have them. You're in the right place at the right time. Can you force a sighting? Perhaps. There are some people who get one with nature, and they're just out there. They're by themselves, and all the power to them if they can do it. But if you've ever been in the bush anywhere like Canada, and you come across a mammoth of a creature, take for instance a moose. I've been 4 feet from a bull moose and a cow and had to hide behind a big boulder. You need to realize that when you're out in nature, these things are going to happen. And, I always laugh when we go through the Rocky Mountain area and I see people out there and they're hiking, and they are what I call city folks. And I've lived in the city, but they're not prepared. Some people will get bear mace, and I think bear mace is overpriced right now. So I think a lot of people aren't getting it because of the price, and I think the price should come down. That's just my opinion. But like $65 or $85 for a can of bear mace, it's going to save your life. If it's sprayed at a grizzly bear, it's going to have no effect on a black bear. And there's 2 different sets of rules for both that you need to follow. And so before you go out in the bush, you should really know the types of animals that are in the bush, and then be rational and realize that there are dogmen, there are Bigfoot out there, and you need to expect the unexpected when you're traveling through the woods. You can't go out there in expensive clothing and a knapsack with snacks in it and think you're safe. So, you need to get advice when you're going to travel in an area. And I think that it's an injustice to the people, the hikers that are traveling those trails, if the rangers, the wardens, the MNR in that area don't put out notices or warnings about them, because then people are going to be looking for them. And so, people may choose not to go in the woods that day, and that's fine, especially in those areas. You can sit at the base of the mountain in a coffee shop, and it's absolutely beautiful. Or you can go for a hike through town and out through just minimal areas where you're still going to need your bear mace because there's still grizzlies, but it's beautiful. The So, yeah, and the speed that they can travel, like 60 miles an hour running beside your vehicle. So, if you're going to jump in your vehicle and boot it out of there, you better make sure that you can keep your speed up if they're going to go at that speed running beside you. Um, so, if anybody has any questions and they want to email me, they can. Um, so, I mean, right from every area, Highway 11, Alexandria, Quebec, the Ottawa region, the Niagara Escarpment, the Rouge River. They've been seen. Alberta, the Boreal Forest, the foothills, the mountains, Kananaskis, BC, Victoria, Vancouver. Like, they have been spotted everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Um, and no matter where they are and who sees them, they all have the same ill health afterwards. So I think that people need to look up what's in that area where they've seen it and get some help. And don't be afraid to speak about it. And that's about it. Yeah, I think I've covered all of the. Oh, the high school children, they were in Green Hill, Nova Scotia. And that's where they had the sighting. It was Miles McKenzie and his father, Stephen. And so his father was the coach, and they were all out running in the Green Hill Provincial Park, and they seen a dogman. So remember that no matter where you are in Canada, um, if you can get a picture, great. I've had people say to me that there was so much fear in them that they felt that if they picked up their phone to take a picture, that they'd be dead. So there's they have an ability, the dog man, to impose fear upon you, dread upon you, get into your psyche, understand who you are, know your habits, just like any predator would do or any true warrior would do. They're going to know your habits and they're going to stalk you. So, with that, I'd like to say thank you for stopping by. And I am Sher, the Shadow Walker, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Good night.